Would you cast Marie Antoinette as a African American, just like Netflix did?
Sure, why not?
Because she was white.
Of course, but maybe that's not the story I'm telling. Maybe I'm not telling the true story of Marie Antoinette. They did it with Bridgerton. I thought that was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
But can you do vice versa? Can you hire a white person to act as a African American in the movie?
Well,
For example, you like MLK, right?
yes, of course.
Would you consider hiring a white person to act to be as an MLK in your movie?
No, I couldn't.
It doesn't sound good, right?
It doesn't sound good.
Right.
It doesn't sound good, but it's also, yes, I feel like that in particular it would be. I don't think that would be very respectful.
But that's racism.
Yeah.
But an African American can act as a Marie Antoinette, which was a white person.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, certainly. I think what it comes down to is I don't think it's giving people of color roles that are specifically historically people who are white. I don't think that's what it is. I think it's giving people of color an opportunity to play roles that they maybe normally wouldn't get. For instance, people of color historically have gotten a lot of like police roles or the sort of not the lead, they're sort of maybe sometimes have been in the background. Of course you have, certain people like Denzel,
yeah.
of course.
Now his son is amazing.
Absolutely amazing. So I think that's really what we're looking at here, is that just the idea that you have a lead in a movie, that it doesn't necessarily just have to be a white person, that it could be somebody who is foreign, who is.
Oh, that's for sure.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think historically when we look at something like Marie Antoinette or MLK or things like that, personally, no, I would not hire somebody who was outside of that ethnic background to do that, just because I think that would be disrespectful in my opinion. But I think if you look at a story like Bridgerton and you say, well, they're taking the idea of what this world was, and that you could fit into it. And what I look at it is like, wow, interesting that could have been the world, but it wasn't. So I think that is what Shonda Rhimes is doing there, is she's trying to look outside the box and say, look at this world that we've created. It could have been that way. It wasn't historically, but
like a multiverse.
Yeah, absolutely.
In other world, the MLK would be white, for example.
Sure. And maybe that is an interesting story that we were to look at it. Maybe white people would look at that whole thing differently. Maybe any other race would look at it differently if it were put that way. I don't know. I don't know that I'm the person to tell that story, and I think that's what it really gets down to, is that when I want to tell stories or when I'm looking at scripts or I'm reading scripts, I'm really looking at, does this script have value in terms of what it can do for people? Does it provide inspiration? Does it provide hope? Will people feel themselves seen? Is this a story that needs to be told? Specifically with My Home Unknown, there hasn't been a lot of stories about a woman living on the street with schizophrenia. That for me was so interesting. I was like, oh wow, that's an interesting story. Something really hasn't very much been done. Now, could someone else played that role? Yaz wrote that movie, the woman who wrote the film. She wrote it, she directed, and she starred in it. So it was a vehicle for her to share that story. But we maybe could have put anybody in that role. You know what I'm saying? But still, at the end of the day, the story that we were getting was that this is a woman, so her experience is going to be different on the street than a man's experience. And then she has schizophrenia. So now this is somebody's experience on the street who also has a mental illness and is just not on the street. So that kind of stuff, I think, for me, is what we stand behind at Wally Bird. I'm always looking to do the thing that maybe we haven't really seen before. And I think that's exciting. That's like it's just a very exciting thing because we just haven't seen it. So it's like going into a store and, oh, that's cool. I haven't seen that before. I want to buy that. Yeah. It gets you excited about it.
Speaking of sexism in the movies, so 2006, I believe that was the year when two almost identical movies came out. The first one was with Emil Hirsch called Into the Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the movie?
Yes.
Incredible movie,
Incredible
right?
movie, yes.
Based on the book.
Yes.
And I believe 2006, maybe a year later, there was another movie called Just Wild with Reese Witherspoon. You saw this movie?
I did not see it. I love Reese Witherspoon. Love her so much. But I have heard of it. Did not see it.
It was very similar movie to Into the Wild. Amazing movie as well.
Yeah.
So that was a man character. That was a woman character. No
Yeah.
problem with this. Absolutely. So almost kind of an identical story was told from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Amazing. No problem
Yes.
with this.
Yes.
But for example, if that movie was Into the Wild was based on a movie on a book that wrote the guy that was on that trip.
Sure.
If that guy was, for example, he was white, but if they would cast African American, I believe someone would be disappointed. But they would never do the vice versa. If the
Right.
guy would be black, African American, and if they would hire a white guy to play his role, that would be a huge impact.
Here's the thing. I think from the beginning of Hollywood, Hollywood is not that old, remember? It's not really
100 years.
Yeah. That's not that old. Considering we have civilizations who have been here thousands of years. When you look at since the beginning of Hollywood, I think really and truly at the end of the day, what it's about is with everything that has gone on politically, certainly over the years, Hollywood is a place where there just hasn't been the opportunity for those people to take those spaces because they wouldn't allow it. And I think that's the thing that we're talking about. We're talking about the opportunity to say, well, just because you are something, you're not going to get this. You're not going to get this role. You're not going to have this
if you're
opportunity.
black, if you're
Correct. And I think that's the thing that we're changing here. And now
that's racism. That's for sure. That's
this
the problem.
time period.
Really.
You know what I mean? So I think that's the important part is that we're going in the right direction there, going like, yes, you should be given opportunity, especially if you are a person who is living here. You want to make a difference in the world. You want to be somebody who inspires people and inspires hope in people. So I think that's the thing. I see what you're saying in terms of that, and I think it's a difficult thing because I don't think anybody is saying, oh, just because you're white or whatever or not, you're not going to no longer have those roles. I just think it's important that we look and we go, well, who else is out here? There has to be other stories that have been told.
Sure.
There has to be other ways of seeing the world through other people's eyes. Your journey in the world is different than my journey.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting. I want to know about your journey, just like you want to know about mine. This is what's so fantastic that you do this podcast, because you're talking to people who are from all different journeys and walks of life. So as people who are filmmakers and people who have the ability to tell stories, and specifically for me, because I'm somebody who hires people in roles of leadership, I want to look and say, who's the best person for that role? 100%.
Based on fit, who fits the most?
Absolutely.
Doesn't care.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%. That's always going to be the first and foremost thing. Who's the best person for this role? And secondly, I want to fill my sets with people who look different, who are different, who haven't had those opportunities to be on set before because they just haven't been given that opportunity. I want to be a champion for people and say, oh, you haven't really done this before? Okay, well, come on in and learn how to do it. Because I think that if you give people that opportunity, they will add value, and that's what it's about. Can you come into a room and add value? To me, that's important. So I don't care truly at the end of the day what your cultural background is you're going to add value.
Yeah.
What I think is important is that you can see yourself in many different places on a set, and that is inspiring, especially for young women, just because we just haven't historically seen it. So it's important to me that I do that, because at some point I'm going to leave this earth. And what am I leaving behind? I'm leaving, I hope, the films that I've created and also how I've treated people.
Well, you can say that the world hasn't seen a lot of women in the Hollywood. Meryl Streep is famous for 40 or 50 years.
Sure, yes, absolutely. I don't think that it's seeing women in those particular roles. I think it's seeing women in the role of cinematographer or in the role of director. When we think of directors, who do we think about? We think about Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino. We can name these dudes off like that. It's very rare that we have women that we can say that. We can say Catherine
Yeah.
Bigelow, Jane Campion, Greta Gerwig. Yes, you know. And what I'm saying is that there is a movement here that more and more women can see themselves in that leadership position. And I think that's fantastic. That's so important because there should be space for everybody. I mean, and that's really truly at the end of the day. That is, I think that's what this country was built on, is that you can come from somewhere else and you can make it. My great grandfather was a sea captain
Hmm.
in Croatia. And they came to America. And when he came here, he cleaned spittoons, literally. He went from the highest of the
Yeah.
high to the lowest of the low. Why? Because there was an opportunity here. And that's what's so fantastic. That's what's so important. And I think that's something that we cannot forget. If you're willing to do that and you're willing to go into the, you know, and do the hard work, you can create the life that you want. But people that are in leadership positions like me have to see other people and give them those opportunities. And that's why it's important. That's why Wally Bird Productions is a place that I want you to be different. I want to tell your story. I want to hear about you because why not? We have seen those other stories. And I'm going to tell all kinds of different stories because and I say that we are all genre. I don't just tell one genre. I don't tell just dramas or just comedies. We run the gamut of it, and it's exciting. You know, this is. I hope that we continue, all of us collectively as a human spirit, that we all want to see how everybody has a different journey.
Yeah, but in the end of the day, still the people that vote with their dollars are gonna dictate what kind of movies they want to see. I'm
Mm-hmm.
all in for the possibilities and
Sure.
chances for women, for African American, Chinese, everyone in the world
Yeah.
to get their chance. But if you're a woman or a black guy or a black woman, Chinese, but if you do a shitty product, the market doesn't value it. They say,
Sure.
I'm not paying for this movie. I'm not paying for your
Absolutely.
product or service. That's it.
No, you
We
can
don't,
have a shitty product no matter
yes,
what background you have.
for sure.
It's about the product.
You mentioned Catherine Bigelow. Yes, someone can say she was a wife of James Cameron. Yes, but she was the one that filmed that film with Keanu Reeves.
Hurt Locker, she did.
Hurt Locker, she did in
Incredible.
2012. But
Yep.
before that, back in 1990s,
Yes.
she filmed an action movie that was
Yes.
incredible.
Yes.
They made a remake of that movie a few years ago and it flopped because the
Mhm.
original one was amazing.
Yeah.
No one gave a shit
I
that she
know.
was a woman
No.
in a director's chair.
Yeah.
She did amazing product.
Yeah, I think that what's so astounding about it is that it was a woman doing this action film, which seemed unheard of, really,
Yeah.
up until that time. And I think nowadays it's not so, oh my God, that's so crazy. She was certainly a you know, legendary in terms of a fire starter of doing that and
Yes.
saying, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And she has had her own success away from James Cameron, certainly.
The Hurt Locker.
He's brilliant. I mean, he's also brilliant. Two incredibly talented people. But she really carved out a lane for herself, which I think is good. And what did it come down to? She made a damn good movie.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to. You know, you can be certainly every color of the rainbow. Is the film good or not? And I think that's why I was saying to you earlier, it comes back to the product. It comes back to the script. It comes back to what is it that we're actually creating? What's the message that we're saying? You know, and I think audiences are smart nowadays. I mean, I do. I think people, that's why some movies flop. They can't just, they're going to put out the same old thing again. People aren't going to do it. They've gotten smarter. We had to sit home and watch everything for a whole year because we couldn't go anywhere. And
Yeah.
people are sick and tired of seeing crappy things.
Yeah.
They're not into it. They're like, I want to be inspired. I think we're seeing a tide turn here. People are like, that's why Sound of Freedom is so amazing, because people are saying, no, wait a minute. this is important, and it actually inspires me to want to go out and make change and make this world a better place. We have to make this for our children,
Yeah.
for their children, you know, and I think that's certainly the goal in mind. That's certainly what I'm trying to do. And I think that when we look at it as a collective, you know, we're all just here for such a short amount of time. So try and do your best to make the best products that you can in the amount of time that you're here. We don't get forever. There is no such thing. So
As far as we know.
as far as we know.
Yeah. If you like this short clip, you are more than welcome to watch the full episode on my other YouTube channel called Apollo the Original.